Welcome back to another MeoMotion tutorial. As you can see, I have a character I made in MeoMotion running in the MonoGame runtime version. I can change the speed of his walk, slow it down with Q, and then I can hit B to make him blink. And if I want, I can even test out other characters that are on this by assigning a different character to character 0. So the way this works is you have your MeoMotion object here, which loads and stores your MeoMotion character. If you go to the MeoMotion class, it has its parts, keys, final render data, and then it has a loader here. Of interest to you will be the Meow animation class right here, because here you can add customized properties. So you could look up an animation, get the index, and then you could add custom variables in here for modifying the animation's behavior. Like you could have one that controls the flip of the animation. Here I added one for default speed of the character, and this one's for default offset of the character for this particular animation. So for example, if the character was crouching, you might not want him floating in the air, so you'd want to alter his default offset position. Same for the speed. If he's in idle, you probably don't want him running at 100%. You might want him running at only 50% speed, so you might change it to 0.5. If I go into the Game 1 class here, you'll see that I actually reduced it to 60% here. So what I did was I look up the animation, just saying I want the idle animation. The character is assigned to Cider Sheet, so it knows I want to use the Cider character. Cider Sheet is the original project name I used for the original character, and it uses that to distinguish between different characters in the combined project. And then I say, tell me the index of idle, and then I say this is going to be its default offset, and this is going to be its default speed. Then I do the same for blink. What is the index of blink? We're going to move it up a bit, and we're going to make it 70% speed, 0.7. We can pick the animation with set animation and the default direction that the character is facing. This flip variable here. So if flip is false, that means he'll be facing his default direction. If I set this to true, then he would initially be facing in the other direction, which actually makes more sense with this character. So the Meow Player class is actually what, and you can go into Meow Player and you can customize that too. So basically what constitutes customized behaviors in the Meow Player class is the update method right here. If you wanted to add customized things like rotation responses to character motion, like trailing hair, a tail, or you wanted to add, like, say, vector-based weapon pointing animation, this is where you might do that sort of programming. And then again, you can also just select from a variety of different animations that you've loaded. So just to show you, in the MonoGame version, you would add your combined PNG in here. I'll show you a preview. You can see what it did when it combined these three characters into one sheet. It'll just keep adding until it gets to 4096, and then it'll start adding down here. You want to go back, and then you want to go into where your executable is, and then you add this here, which is the text version. I don't have binary versions yet. Here you have your TXT version. If you forget the name of the original character sheet name that you used to assign each character, if I wanted to add, say, characters 1, I could add caddy sheet, a default position, MeoMotion class, I'll pass it the distort batch. And here I set up an enum of different motions that the character might have. And then here's the logic that determines how the character's motions might change, selecting a different animation based on what the character is doing. You want to make sure that you set character to flip in the correct direction based on what direction the character happens to be moving, unless you want him to be facing forward and you get knocked back or something. And this is all there is to drawing it, really. The real magic happens in the character's update right here, which happens in Meow Player. You can change the pre-multiply alpha value if you're using alpha blending, and this is a pre-multiplied alpha texture map. But these should all require pre-multiplication of the alpha channel for the alpha blending. So that's why I added this. You may notice that different versions of the Meow players for DirectX or SharpDX, OpenGL, SDL2, we may notice some slight differences, but the layout's very similar and the way they work is very, very similar. You may notice in the player that during the update I actually set it to a fixed step for the timing. If you were doing something online, you probably wouldn't want to do that because I lock it at 60 frames per second, and this tells it where in the timeline this animation is trying to play. So yeah, basically all you really need to know to use a MeoMotion animation is how to set up a player, which is like this. Character 0, character 1, character 2, character 3, however many you have. If you're using C++, you'll be using a resized vector. And then how to get the index. And you can use enums and then have it fetch the index, or have it just know the index based on the enum. Or you can do like I did. Based on the enum, okay, well this is motion.idle. We want to set animation idle. This uses, in C++, it uses an unordered map, which is the equivalent of a dictionary in Monogame. It's using a hash table to look up the value. It's very quick. These value associations don't change, so that sort of thing is ideal. If you're interested in the sprite batch distortion, or distorted vertices, and it's a little bit complex. Some of these I probably should make local to make them run a bit faster. So in Monogame, you can just double click on this to run your pipeline. And you can add your different effects and stuff in here. And then you can edit the attributes of them down here, like pre-multiply alpha. So there's a few things you might want to change in the sprite batch distort class. Like right now I have it resetting the Z after every draw. If you're actually using the depth and you don't want this behavior, you just want it to change the default depth between each begin-end statement, you might want to move this into the end statement instead. It is possible to use a 3D camera in here and have this entire system operate in a 3D scene. Just an FYI. You might want to modify this too so it's not always updating these states if they're always staying the same. It may be that it already recognizes whether or not it's the same, and they may already have it optimized for that. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, right here, this is where you call to load your animation. If there's anything else you need to know, just let me know in the comments. Thanks for listening. Have a nice day.